السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. It is a great honor to meet you all in this international conference. Although I am joining you virtually, I feel deeply connected to this vibrant community of scholars, educators and researchers who have gathered here to exchange ideas and explore new horizons in our shared field. May this conference be an enriching experience for all of us, one that inspires new research, strengthens international connections, and renews our passion for discovery. Thank you all, and once again, happy to meet you in this remarkable event. My presentation is entitled Gender Differences in Classroom Behavior Among Algerian Middle School Students, a Socio-Cultural Perspective. This study examines the influence of gender on students' classroom conduct in Algerian middle schools. It reveals that female students often display greater attentiveness and cooperation during lessons, whereas male students are more likely to engage in assertive and disruptive behaviors. Such students are shaped by cultural values, parental upbringing, and educators' differing expectations of boys and girls, all of which reinforce traditional gender roles within the classroom context. The middle school years mark a critical stage of physical, cognitive, and social growth, often reflected in distinct classroom behaviors between boys and girls. In Algeria, classrooms mirror broader societal norms, where cultural values and gender expectations shape students' conduct. Research shows that girls tend to be more compliant and attentive, while boys are often more assertive and disruptive. Within the Algerian context, historical and cultural influences further shape these patterns. This study explores how gender differences manifest in classroom behavior and examines the socio-cultural factors such as family expectations, peer dynamics, and teacher perceptions that contribute to them. As previously noted, classroom behavior in Algerian middle schools displays clear distinction between boys and girls. These differences are deeply rooted in the socio-cultural fabrics of society, where family upbringing, cultural expectations, and educational practices collectively shape students' gender identities and behaviors. Therefore, the guiding research question for this study is, how do socio-cultural factors shape gender differences in classroom behavior among Algerian middle school students? Globally, research on gender and classroom behavior highlights consistent patterns in how boys and girls engage with learning environments. Myhale and Jones emphasize that teacher-student interactions are inherently gendered, with teachers often giving more attention to boys, sometimes reinforcing assertive or disruptive behaviors, while expecting compliance and cooperation from girls. Similarly, Colonel argues that masculinity is frequently constructed in opposition to academic compliance, as boys face social pressure to appear dominant and disengage from what is perceived as feminine academic efforts. In contrast, girls are often rewarded for their conformity and diligence, receiving more positive evaluations from teachers. Together, these studies suggest that classroom dynamics are shaped not only by individual behavior, but also by broader social constructions of gender that influence expectations and participation worldwide. Scholarly accounts of gendered behavior in Algerian classrooms emphasize the moral and social framing that surrounds girls' and boys' conduct. As Boudiaf observes, a girl's silence is seen as a mark of good upbringing, while a boy's spokesness is viewed as a sign of potential leadership. This formulation highlights how cultural values attach different moral meanings to the same behaviors. Quietness in girls is interpreted positively as evidence of proper socialization, whereas assertiveness in boys is read as an indicator of future public authority. Nabila Bilal extends this cultural account by naming and contrasting the normative ideals taught to each sex. Daughters are socialized in al-hashia, modesty and reserve, which is celebrated as the essence of politeness, whereas sons are afforded al-hurriya, freedom, to express assertiveness as preparation for public roles. Bilal's phrasing underscores that gender dispositions are not merely individual traits but culturally transmitted views that schools and families actively cultivate. Family and school act together to produce these norms. Families instill expectations of modesty and deference in girls and encourage autonomy and dominance in boys. Schools often reflect and legitimize these expectations through teacher responses, classroom management, and evaluative practices. The combined effect is a patterned divergence in classroom conduct. Girls' quietness and diligence are praised and ordered, while boys' assertiveness is more tolerated and sometimes valorized, thereby producing gendered pathways of behavior and opportunity within the education system. This study employed a mixed method design, combining both quantitative and qualitative approaches to explore gender differences in classroom behavior among Algerian middle school students. The integration of these methods allowed for a comprehensive understanding of behavioral patterns and the socio-cultural factors influencing them. The research sample consisted of 450 middle school students, 225 boys and 225 girls, selected from 3 major Algerian cities, Algiers, Oran and Tizi Ouzou. These regions were chosen to ensure regional and cultural diversity, representing both urban and semi-urban educational contexts. Participants came from mixed-gender classrooms within public middle schools. 2 main instruments were used for data collection. Systematic observation were conducted across multiple class sessions to record pattern of participation, interaction and behavioral differences between male and female students. A structured observation checklist was employed to quantify aspects such as attentiveness, compliance, assertiveness, and disruptive behavior. Semi-structured interviews were carried out with both teacher and student to gain deeper insight into the perceptions and experiences underlying classroom behavior. The teacher interviews focus on expectations, perceptions of gender roles, and classroom management strategies, while students' interviews explored self-perceptions, peer influence, and family expectations. The quantitative results reveal a clear behavioral divergence between male and female students in Algerian middle school classrooms. Girls demonstrated high levels of academic engagement with 35% more instances of hand raising and 85% on task behavior, indicating stronger classroom participation and attentiveness. In contrast, boys announced for 78% of classroom interruptions and were on task only 62% of the time, suggesting a tendency toward more disruptive and less sustained engagement. Furthermore, boys received 80% of all disciplinary actions, reflecting both their higher rates of disruptive behavior and possibly teachers' stricter responses to male assertiveness. These findings align with global research indicating that girls are often rewarded for compliance and attentiveness, while boys are more likely to exhibit and be disciplined for overt or dominant behavior. Overall, the quantitative data underscore a gendered pattern of classroom behavior, where girls' quiet diligence contrasts sharply with boys' assertive and sometimes disruptive conduct. A pattern that mirrors broader socio-cultural expectations within Algerian society. The qualitative data provide deeper insight into the social and cultural factors underlying gender behavior in Algerian classrooms. Familial influence emerged as a major theme. Girls' classroom conduct was often linked to the concept of family honor, with many students reporting that their parents encouraged modesty, politeness, and academic diligence as reflections of proper upbringing. This socialization reinforced girls' tendency to be quiet, compliant, and respectful in classroom settings. In contrast, peer culture played a stronger role in shaping boys' behavior. Male students often described feeling pressure to perform masculinity through acts of defiance, such as speaking out of turn or challenging authority to gain peer approval. Such behaviors were interpreted as a sign of confidence and social strength rather than misconduct. Teacher expectations further reinforced these differences. Many teachers perceived boys as naturally energetic and girls as calm and diligent, resulting in differential treatment and tolerance levels. While boys' restlessness was often excused or normalized, girls' quietness was praised as exemplary. Taken together, these findings illustrate how familial, peer, and institutional influences collectively construct and sustain gender behavioral norms in Algerian classrooms, reflecting the broader socio-cultural dynamics of Algerian society. The findings of this study demonstrate that gender differences in classroom behavior are not innate but socio-culturally constructed, shaped by family expectations, peer dynamics, and teacher perceptions. Girls' compliance and quietness and boys' assertiveness and defiance reflect deeply rooted cultural values that are reproduced within the school environment. To address these disparities, teachers should adopt gender-responsive pedagogical approaches that recognize and challenge stereotypical expectations. Classroom practices must encourage equitable participation and value both assertiveness and cooperation as positive learning behaviors, regardless of gender. At the institutional level, educational policy should tackle gender bias through teacher training programs, curriculum reform, and awareness campaigns that promote inclusivity and sensitivity to gender dynamics in teaching and assessment. Finally, future research should include longitudinal studies to trace how classroom behavior and gender norms evolve over time, providing a deeper understanding of how educational interventions can foster greater equity and participation among all students.